Have you ever wondered why there's so much division due to identity politics in America? We introduce you to the mastermind behind all of it. Meet Antonio Gramsci. Say hello, Antonio.
Ciao.
Antonio was a radical protege of communist philosopher Karl Marx.
Greetings.
Only, instead of jumping on board Marx's method of pushing a fast-paced revolution to communize the world,
Workers of the world unite.
Antonio had a very different plan. He believed that a globalized communist state can only be accomplished through a slow, determined march throughout history, a march that infiltrates and controls every facet of civilization. Gramsci understood that in order to dominate the world with communism, communist leaders would have to be put in charge, and the only way that communist leaders can gain power is if popular opinion put them there. He understood that the way to shape popular opinion was through the arts, organizations, and the institutions, all working together to delegitimize a Judeo-Christian Western civilization, and in its place, validate a totalitarian Marxist civilization.
In the new order, socialism will triumph by first capturing the culture through the infiltration of schools, universities, churches and the media by transforming the consciousness of society. Socialism is precisely the religion that must overwhelm Christianity.
From the well-regarded pedestals of society, Gramsci wanted to effectively kill traditional Judeo-Christian values and instead promote secular socialist values. First up on the list of institutions that Gramsci said must be infiltrated are the public schools. We are seeing this played out before us today. First, in the ACLU's relentless attempt to remove anything having to do with God or Christianity from public schools.
A number of football games all across Middle Tennessee tonight likely began with a prayer, but the ACLU wants to see that Southern tradition come to an end.
The organization says too many schools are violating the First Amendment with this pregame prayer.
Many public schools aim to weaken the image of God in their young students' minds by raising doubt in the biblical account of how God created the earth in only 6 days. The idea behind this is that if people don't trust God, then they won't trust in his principles either. Listen to this argument against Christianity and the biblical creation account by public school science sensation Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Would it be your opinion
really
then, and again,
troubling.
I'm just trying to extrapolate what you're saying here, that maybe those, the evangelics, who you will, those who believe in creationism, that maybe they are keeping their kids from becoming smarter than they could be, keeping them down, keeping them less intelligent?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. No, they're holding the kids back. These kids will not be able to participate in the future in the same way that kids from other school systems, New York, Maryland, exotic places like that.
One last example of how secular socialists are infiltrating public schools is in their agenda to blur the line between male and female, indoctrinating students into believing that gender is merely an identity.
Public schools in Fairfax County, Virginia are preparing to include gender identity in its curriculum for grades 7 through 12. The family life education lessons will include teachings on heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, and transgender identity.
I would feel comfortable with them going into the bathroom because obviously they think that they're female and I'm female, so they wouldn't harm me.
Also on the list of Gramsci's institutions to infiltrate are colleges and universities. While universities should be a place where students can discuss, debate, and examine ideas thoughtfully, they have instead become a hotbed for liberal indoctrination and domination, where professors and students demand that their ideas be heard on one hand, while on the other hand, designating so-called safe spaces for themselves as bunkers to go to whenever someone with opposing ideas speak on campus. It is true that many socialist-minded professors use their classrooms as a platform to infuse animosity in the minds of their students as a means of organizing a generation of angry liberal agitators.
White privilege is a form of an unearned advantage for white people.
Next up is Gramsci's infiltration of the media. Most Americans are aware of the fact that most mainstream news platforms lean left, but there are also many who do not realize the influence that the other encompassing parts of media have on society, namely music and television. Celebrities are so exalted as gods among men in American culture that they are effectively able to drive the narrative by using music and television as a kind of socialist propaganda. Many of the minds behind American media use the industry as a platform to normalize ideas and behaviors that are traditionally viewed as abnormal. It's no secret that Hollywood has an agenda to advance the socialist ideas of the Democrat Party. Hollywood elites showed up in droves for presidential candidates Barack Obama in 2008, and Hillary Clinton in 2016, using their influence to organize their fan base.
But you only get this many famous people together if the issue's
one that truly matters to all of us.
A disease or
ecological crisis or
a racist, abusive coward who could permanently damage the fabric of our society.
Lastly, Gramsci believed that socialism must infiltrate the church. It is important to understand that many churches in America are spiritually healthy and Christ-centered. On the other hand, however, churches where Christ is not the center are typically used as platforms for immoral ideologues to promote their own self-interests. Take these two so-called pastors, for example, who admit to using their churches to tell people to vote for Democrat Hillary Clinton, not for the sake of faith, but in turn for cash.
How it would have transactional?
I mean, he could possibly make a check to you. You cash the check and just give me cash. Or he could make the check to a particular church. And it works out because it's a charitable donation to him because it looks like he just gave a donation to a church.
So whether it's the public school's attempt to discredit God and encourage students to be so-called free thinkers, or the university's manipulating students into believing the contradiction that free thinking means subscribing to socialism, or the media working simultaneously to create the illusion that secularism is okay, socialism is awesome, and conservatives and Christians are bigots, or the several godless churches who suckers congregants into embracing politicians and ideas that are essentially anti-God, these so-called liberal activists and community organizers are really just socialists who are following Gramsci's model by using the institutions to demonize opposing ideologies on one hand, while simultaneously romanticizing human socialism on the other hand. Naturally, hostility arises as more people who fall victim to the brainwashing of Gramsci's model begin to identify their political opponents as enemies of progress. Among the conservatives and traditionalists who are the subject of liberal provocation, there are some who react with irrational viciousness, which only causes the hostility and division to escalate all the more. Socialist politicians then use the division to conquer, that is, to set themselves up as liberators and unifiers. Will their efforts ever work? Well, while there has been many self-admitted socialists and communists who have ran for president in the past, the closer any of them has ever came to winning was in 2016 with Bernie Sanders.